Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 299. Today we're going to talk about Subdivision. And this is from Bezier Games. Plays 1 to 4 players. Actually has some solitaire rules in it. It's kind of a spiritual successor to Suburbia. Players will be developing their own kind of subdivision. Everybody has their own individual player board. And you'll do kind of a drafting technique with tiles, placing those tiles down and then activating any adjacent tiles to get out different structures and parks and things like that out onto the board. But you're going to draft the tile sort of like cards. So you have a hand of them, and then you choose one and play it down, and then everybody passes them around. And then you try to build up little networks and parks and road networks and all kinds of cool stuff. And there's also scenarios and other cool little things in there. So let's jump into how the game works, and I'll come back and say what I think about it. Now here you can see all the components in the game. Each player is going to get a player board, and these are double-sided, and you can choose which side you want to play on. One thing to note here is you have this special +2 area. On this side it's in the center of the board, and you can also see this highway kind of going into the subdivision and then leaving it out this exit here. If we flip the board over, we have a little bit different layout here. We have the +2 here, as well as the highway going down sort of the left-hand central part of the board. So players will be able to choose which side they want to play on. And obviously enough, what you're trying to do is get the most points. Now you're going to get points a variety of ways, but before I tell you how to get points, let's talk about how you're going to play the game. So you can see here we have kind of like 2 groupings of tiles. We've got this group here. These are the zone tiles. Each of these stacks is going to be the same height with the same number of tiles. It changes based on player count. And then the first stack is going to have nothing on top of it. The second stack is going to have this sort of like level 2 or round 2 bonus tile, round 3, and then round 4. You can see this kind of gives you a target here. For example, this one says if you have 2 lakes, anybody that has 2 lakes is going to get $2 extra there once we move into the second round. In the third round, if you have a design of shape of tiles on your player board like this, you'll be able to activate either one of these style buildings or these style buildings and so on. Now these here are the cards or tiles that you're going to be playing from your hand and drafting. I'll explain what these do in a minute, but you're going to play these down here on your board and then activate adjacent tiles and do all kinds of cool stuff. Now up here we have 3 different types of improvement tiles, and through the play of these zone tiles some of these may come out. So here you have a lake tile. Remember there, see this one said if you had 2 lakes at the end of the round you get $2. So what the lake tile actually does is it will give you $1 for each adjacent tile of this type here. So you got residential tiles, roads, parks, schools, all kinds of stuff. So anytime you place this here out on your board and you have a tile like, let's say we had 3 tiles next to it, we get $3. And then any new tiles that come on there is going to get an extra $1. So these are a good way to generate money. And I should say, for those of you that are familiar with Suburbia, in that game there was a lot of kind of bookkeeping and managing and looking what's happening on other players' boards, and what restaurant affects another restaurant or what airport affects another airport. There's really not any of that sort of bookkeeping in this game except for these lake tiles, and that's obviously very minor, just to see, oh, did I put a new tile next to a lake? Okay, give myself an extra $1. Now the parks here are similar to the lake in that they actually, at the end of the game, will give you 1 point for each adjacent of those tiles. So if you have a lake or a road or residential or school or whatever, these are going to give you points at the end of the game. So you want to surround these with other tiles that is going to give it points. Lastly, here we have these schools. And these schools will give you points in some other ways, and also though this is the only tile that can be stacked. Now one school by itself is going to score 0. If you stack another one on there, still 0 points. But if you ever have a stack of 3 schools, you're going to get 8 points. You can't stack a school higher than that. And then schools will also help you score in other ways. But if you're just looking at the school individually, you want to get a stack of 3 of those to get points. Now the game comes with a player aid for each player. You can see on this side it tells you what each of the 5 different zone tiles that you're going to be drafting and playing do. And then on the back side here, you can see actually what the end game scoring is going to be. So you've got the parks, you've got little sidewalks, schools, you get some points for money, and then some other points here which I'll explain more. So how does the game around going to actually work? Well, players will simply draw 5 tiles out of whatever round we're in, out of that current stack. So the first round you're going to draw 5 out of there, and then you're going to look here, and everybody's going to take, and we're going to put face down and then play simultaneously onto the board. And then after placing the tile, you're going to take the 4 remaining tiles, pass them to the player on your left, get the other tiles from the player on your right, play one of those, pass, play, until you only have 1 tile left, and then that's going to get discarded. So you're going to have 4 rounds of 4 turns each, so 16 total turns over the whole game to play. Now, how do you know where to play these? Well, each turn you're going to roll this die here, and this is going to tell you where you can place a tile for free. So let's say we had rolled this star here, and so we can place on any of these star tiles for free. So we could take maybe and place this one here. Now, let's say you covered up all your stars, or you know, placing in a star way off here and the boonies isn't going to do any good. You can always pay $2 and place the tile wherever you want. You can also place it here on the +2 space. Now, the thing to keep in mind with these numbers here, these are the amount of points you're going to lose, or in the case of this 1 space, you're actually going to gain points. So that's fine. We're going to place a tile. Now, what do these tiles actually do? Because as I said, there's 5 different tiles. Well, placing a tile here by itself doesn't do anything. But if you place a tile adjacent to another tile that you've placed on a previous turn, it's going to activate any tile it touches. So let's say we had these 2 tiles placed here on our previous turns, and we come and place this one, then we could activate this one and this one. Now here we have this civic tile, and if you zoom in there, you can see it's got little pictures of the little park tiles. And you can see these little arrows going out this different directions. What that means is you can place anywhere that's open one of these little park tiles, and remember these score you points at the end of the game, along that axis there. So I can place this over here, or down here, or over here, or something like that. So I could place that there if I wanted. All that does is, remember, not when I place the tile, but when I place the tile against it, that's going to generate that, and then I can stick out a park somewhere over there. And these luxury zones here are very similar. This one though is for the lakes, and again you can see you've got these little radius arrow things going out that way, and then I'm going to place that, you know, in here. And remember, the lakes actually score you $1 immediately when you put it adjacent to anything, or later on put more stuff adjacent to the lake. Now we have our industrial zone, and this is going to allow us to place roads. Now, the one thing to note is roads are on the back of all of these different improvement tiles here. So whenever you want a road, just take one of the tiles from that stack, and then you're going to have these roads that you can actually place out onto the board. Now when this gets activated, you can place 0, 1, or 2 roads within 2 spaces of this tile. And so let's say I could place, you know, a road here and here, and then we start to build a little bit of a road network. Now the reason that the roads exist is so that you can draw from your zone tiles. And again, zone tiles are the ones that you're actually playing for their actions. The improvements are the other things like the parks and the lakes and the roads. But what you're trying to do is draw from your zone tile back to the highway. Now if you have other zone tiles and improvements and stuff like that in the way, then it's going to block getting access to the highway. But you want to place these because they're going to give you points and all kinds of cool special abilities as you're placing stuff adjacent to them. The roads are going to block that out, so you can either draw back to the highway through empty space or through roads, and that's going to allow you to score quite a bit of points at the end of the game. So you really want to get these roads out there. Don't close yourself off too much. Next we have these commercial zones, and when these are activated, you can put out 3 sidewalks, and these are these wooden sticks here. And what you're going to do is you need to have at least one of these adjacent to that. So let's put some tiles out here, and so maybe we're trying to build out a little bit of a network here. Let's stick these here. And so you can build 3 of these. Now later on, if you activate this again, if you have already a sidewalk adjacent to that, then you can extend, you know, an existing sidewalk. So what you're trying to do with the sidewalks, and I'll talk about more when I get to the scoring, is have these sidewalks adjacent to as many different kinds of tiles as you want. So just keep that in mind. I'll talk about exactly how to score it. Finally, we have the residential zone. Whenever this gets activated, you're going to grab one of the schools, and then you can put it adjacent to that residential area. And now again, you can actually stack schools on top of schools up to a height of 3, at which point these are going to score 8 points. And these residential zones can be a little bit tricky actually, because remember, you've got to activate this thing now 3 times. Not only do you have to place it, but then place something next to it to activate it once, twice, and then 3 times to get all three of those schools out. Now you can have multiple residentials adjacent and, you know, activate it, you know, a couple of times. So it's not too tricky, but you can somewhat easily, you know, close yourself off with these. So that's very simply what you're going to be doing on your turn. You're going to be drawing some tiles and then rolling a die to see which type of, you know, location on your board you can place for free. If you don't have anything that you like, you can pay $2 here to place it anywhere, or else you can also place there, but you're covering up the free 2 points. And then once you've done one round, you're going to check the bonus here. There are several bonus tiles there. You can see I've got a stack of 2s, 3s, and 4s. The 2s are always going to give you some money for some condition, number of lakes, you know, number of residences, number of sidewalks, you know, in this case it's a certain shape. And then once you get into round 3 and 4, if you meet the condition, then it allows you to kind of give you a free activation, you know, out here on the board for different types of buildings, which can be pretty interesting to kind of, you know, try to work towards some of those combos there. Once you've gone through all 4 rounds, then you're going to have scoring. So let's talk about scoring. So as you can see by the player, there's 6 ways to score points. So I'm just going to work through all 6 of those very quickly and then wrap up. So the first thing you're going to look at here are the parks, and that's very simple, I said. So it's 1 point per adjacent tiles, and it shows you all the legal tiles here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in this case would be the points we would get for this park. Next, you're going to look at the sidewalks. And what you're trying to do with the sidewalks, again, is get it adjacent to the most different types of tiles. Now, you may have multiple sidewalk segments. You may have one up here, you know, one down here. Most of the time, it's going to be your longest segment, but not always. So you can see here, you're going to take the number of zone tiles, in this case 1, 2, 3, 4, and I should say again the different zone tiles, and multiply that by the number of different improvement tiles. We've got 1, 2, 3. So in this case it would be 4 times 3, so that would be 12 points. And then next here we have the schools, and remember any stack of 3 of these is going to give you 8 points. And then for every $2 you're going to get 1 point. And then you're going to score for highway access. And again, this is drawing from any zone tile back to the highway. Now, other tiles are going to get in the way of drawing back to the highway tile, except for road tiles and empty space here. So this is kind of a bad example, but just to kind of illustrate who's going to score and who's not to score. This one is going to be able to score because obviously it's right adjacent to it. This one you can draw through empty space here. Now this one you can't because it's totally surrounded by other tiles and it doesn't have access through a highway tile here. So if we look at this side here, this one here, this guy can't draw because he can go right through a road into the highway. So for each one of those that you can draw a line through either empty space or the highway tiles, you're going to get 5 points apiece. So this is easily going to be the bulk of your points. You know, I've seen 70 points scored on this, 60, 70. You know, I'm sure you could probably get higher, but so you're going to score a lot of points here. And I think overall you're going to score like 90, 100 points, give or take. Depending on how good you are. And then finally, anything that's uncovered, you're going to lose points for, except of course for the central tile where you're going to get 2 points. And that's pretty much it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. And I think the first thing that's going to come to mind is comparing this to suburbia. You know, subdivision, suburbia, kind of, you know, middle class suburban neighborhoods. There is some similarity somehow. I mean, you've got similar themes, you've got similar components, but really the games are totally different games. Now, one thing where suburbia sort of, I guess, wins over subdivision, even though I don't really necessarily think of it winning and losing, is the theme in suburbia is a lot more present. This is definitely more abstract and sort of tactical in a sense, but you know, it's not like there's totally no theme in subdivision. All right, so let's just kind of get that out of the way, because to me they're two very different games. Now, suburbia is usually going to take you about an hour, hour and a half. Definitely on the lower end of that once you get to play it. This one, the box says 45 minutes. You can easily play this, even with 4 players, in a half an hour, once everybody's played the game a couple of times, and then you just kind of go and everybody has a good idea how to work, at least with like the basic gameplay. Now, what's really cool about this, and I don't know if they got the idea from the Suburbia app, but they have these different scenarios, which are really neat. So a couple of scenarios are basically like, hey, put like a river through your subdivision, and then you take out the tile that generates the rivers. And so you just have the other tiles to play. Or you put a road through, or you put a sidewalk through, and you take out the tiles that generate that, so you have to work through that.
Another one is that you can only play this up to 3 players, which is too bad, but you can sort of block off different areas of your board. You make a new player board that blocks off access to the highway. You got to do it with the one side of the board. So this one has a very confined, constrictive sort of spatial thing happening, where Suburbia really doesn't. It's a little bit more freeform. And I think that really kind of hits me in a better spot in some ways than Suburbia, and I'm splitting hairs here, so please don't act like I'm, being very definitive when I'm saying this. It's just kind of an observation. Whereas Suburbia, you kind of build stuff and it's all like kind of combos, so it could be just basically cards, almost. But, I mean, yeah, you have proximities. But this one, you really have to deal with the spatial constraints, which is the truth of, subdivision planning, urban planning, all that kind of stuff, because real estate is not infinite, right? You don't just like draw your little, industrial park off into infinity like you do in Suburbia, or you could. This one has that, that concern of space and, and suggestive of population and stuff like that. So that really kind of hits me in a thematic way. But I know at the end of the day, it's very much an abstract kind of tile drafting game. It's very much a filler game. You just have your abstract placement. You got basically your 5 actions that you can possibly do. The dice rolling is, I like that. You need to kind of plan ahead and have some money saved up, so that on those turns where you really need to break the dice roll, you're kind of trying to set up a tile placement that's going to trigger a bunch of tiles and really give you some nice opportunities for scoring. Then you roll a diamond instead of a circle, and you shouldn't be like, oh, I got screwed by the dice. Well, no, dude, you should have planned and had some money left over to break that die roll. So I like that. That's also interesting thematically somehow, where it's like I have to, plan out and get my space and get my setup, but boy, I need to generate money somehow. I need some income into this area to be able to do the things I really want to do. You have like sort of plans go awry and you need extra money. The subcontractors came back with, a higher bid than they originally had and all that stuff. So even in the abstraction, there's still a thematic, slap in the face with Subdivision. It's just different than Suburbia. So anyway, that's Subdivision. Kind of went on longer than I thought. But anyway, definitely take a look at it. It is releasing at Gen Con, in a couple of days from the recording of this video. So if you like the good Euro stuff, and it's interesting that they're kind of releasing this at Gen Con and not Essen, which I, as an American, think is awesome, only because it's close to me, and I also like Euros. Anyway, so Subdivision, take a look. Thanks.